Every Canadian city has a dark side. For some, it's the weather. For others, it's the crushing cost of living. And for many, it's simply the feeling that they chose the wrong place to call home. These regrets aren't random. The same patterns show up again and again, no matter where you go. In this video, I've pulled together the top reasons people regret moving to Canada's biggest cities, all in one place. Each city has its own story. Some you'll expect, and some might surprise you. But every regret reveals something bigger about what it's really like to live there. And so use the chapters to jump to the city you're most curious about, or watch it through to see the dark side of every Canadian city. Picture this: Calgary's stunning riverside, warm sunshine, and a lifestyle that almost feels perfect. With endless outdoor activities, a thriving economy, and breathtaking mountain views, it's easy to see why so many people move here.
Commuter chaos as snow conditions.
Calgary's extreme temperature is making it difficult.
Snowiest February 21st in more than 60 years.
But what if I told you, for some, moving here has been their biggest regret? 6 months of relentless winter, blinding storms, and icy winds that make you question every decision you've ever made. Winter isn't just cold. It's isolating, exhausting, and hard to escape. This is just one of the reasons people regret moving to Calgary. Stick around to uncover the rest. You might be surprised by what makes people second guess their decision. But the biggest regret I see is that 94.2% of you right now are not subscribed to the channel. I know, it's kind of crazy. First off is Calgary's real estate market. Because honestly, this is the biggest one that often catches people off guard. Calgary used to be a place where you could actually go afford a home, especially if you were coming from higher priced cities like Vancouver or Toronto. The allure was clear. You have more space, more land, and at prices way lower than what you pay in those other cities. But here's the reality check. Lately, prices have been rising faster than expected. I've talked to a lot of people who moved there thinking they could snag a property for a great price, only just to find out that the market is way more competitive now. The price increases have been quick, and it's becoming harder for first-time homebuyers or people looking to upgrade just to find that dream home without spending a lot more money than they anticipated. And if you're eyeing up those suburbs, just keep in mind that the variety of home designs is somewhat limited, and don't even get me started on the parking. Like any city that's growing fast, parking just becomes an issue. Parking has become such a headache that it can make you second guess the location. And if you're renting, though the market may not be as fierce as Toronto or Vancouver, but it's still more competitive than you think. And while Calgary used to be a haven for those affordable rentals, that's changing too. You may not be facing bidding wars for apartments, but finding a good place in a desirable neighborhood can still be challenging. One thing to keep in mind is that rent prices often increase when leases are up for renewal, and tenants there don't have as much protection as those provinces like Ontario or BC. If you're moving there expecting a stress-free rental process, you might want to do a little bit more research just to make sure that you're ready for the current market conditions. Now the big one: Calgary's weather, which is something that you really do need to brace for. If you've heard people talk about Calgary before, you've probably heard them say, "Don't like the weather? Well, wait 5 minutes." And that's no exaggeration. It can literally go from -30°C one day to +15°C the next day, which can throw anybody off if you're not used to it. And the winters, they can be brutal. If you've never experienced a real Canadian winter before, Calgary's gonna teach you quickly what it's all about. We're talking about deep cold snaps that can dip from -30°C and even lower. The snow's light, so it's easy to shovel, but the temperatures and the wind chill are a completely different story. And let's not forget about the snowstorms that can just pop up out of nowhere and make driving a real challenge. But the thing that really gets people is how even the summer, the nights can be freezing cold. It's that type of weather where one minute you're enjoying the warm, sunny day, but as soon as the sun goes down, you're really wishing you had brought your jacket. And if you're not ready for it, those cold nights can really throw you off. It's definitely not the kind of place where you can just pack a t-shirt and some shorts and call it a day. All right, let's talk about something a lot of people overlook when moving to Calgary, and that's finding a job. Calgary has been labeled a booming city many times, but it's booming in specific industries. Oil and gas, trades. The demand is huge, and if you're in one of those fields, you pretty much can guarantee a job. But here's the catch: if you're in a completely different field, especially something like arts, education, or even tech. It can be a lot harder to break into. I've heard the stories from newcomers who thought they could just walk into and get a job right away, only really just to find themselves waiting a couple months for that opportunity. Some people had to adjust their expectations and take on work that just wasn't their first choice, just to keep afloat until something in their field opened up. It's a reality check that hits a lot of people hard when they do first move here. So if you're thinking of moving to Calgary and you're in one of those niche fields that just are a little bit more specific, it's just essential to come prepared and just expect a longer job search. You might need to be a little bit more flexible and patient and just be ready to adjust to the market here. Or better yet, just make sure you have a job lined up before making a move here. Right? It's kind of a no-brainer. This next one's a biggie, especially if you're moving with your family, because a lot of people that are moving to Alberta, Calgary, is that leaving your home province means leaving your family and supportive networks behind. And for many, they just don't factor that in because it's a lot harder than expected. Because when you're in a new city, building that support network from scratch is tough. You won't have those parents that are just down the street or at least in the same city to help out with babysitting, or just having your close friends for a last-minute chat when you need it. For young families, this can feel especially isolating. Calgary's a great city, but if you just don't know anyone, it can take a long time to find your groove. Even if you do meet some people, it can feel like you're starting from zero, which we've all been there. There are a lot of people in this city who have deep-rooted social networks. And even though Calgary is known for having friendly people, it can still be tough just to connect on that level. And if you're used to having family around to help out with things like after-school pickups or just last-minute errands, Calgary's distance from your home base, from your family and your friends can leave you feeling really overwhelmed. Let's talk about the pace of life. Calgary just has a much slower, laid-back vibe when you compare it to places like Vancouver or Toronto. And that can be a huge adjustment for some people who are coming from the hustle and bustle of those cities. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air for some, but for others, it can feel like things are just moving at a snail's pace. There's not much of a nightlife scene there. Unless you're just into quieter, more intimate hangouts, you might find yourself missing the late-night cafes, the bars, and the clubs that you'll find in those bigger cities. Though the food scene is improving, but let's be honest, it's still not on the level of Vancouver or Toronto. While there are plenty of outdoor activities just to keep you busy, if you're used to constant social events, concerts, or just vibrant downtown, Calgary can just feel a little So if you thrive on excitement and fast-paced environments, you might find yourself wishing for more. So before moving, really ask yourself, do you enjoy a quieter lifestyle, or are you someone who craves that constant buzz of activity? Now let's talk about the politics and culture of Calgary. You probably know this already because you're thinking of moving there, is that Alberta is a very conservative province, and it's something that you need to be aware of. If you come from a more liberal area or just background, you might notice some stark differences in just the values and the priorities of people around you. People in Calgary tend to value their personal space, and they don't love to be dragged into the political debates or confrontations. It's just part of the culture there. Most people aren't as vocal about their political views, and you might find yourself a little more disconnected if your views don't align with the more conservative majority. But by no means does it mean that people are unfriendly. They're just more private when it comes to these certain topics. And if you're someone who enjoys just getting into the deep political debates or cultural discussions, you may find it frustrating to navigate these subtle differences in attitudes here. Just something to keep in mind. Considering a move to Winnipeg? Before you pack your bag, there's a lot you might not know about life here. Winnipeg is known for its friendly people and affordable living, but it's also infamous for its freezing winters, relentless mosquitoes, and yes, those pothole-filled streets. These are just a few of the reasons why some people regret moving here. In this video, I'll walk you through the top challenges of living in Winnipeg and what you need to know to be prepared. By the end, you'll have a clear picture of whether this city is truly the right fit for you. First reason is the extreme weather. Let's get straight to it. Winnipeg's winters are legendary, and not in a good way. From late November to March, temperatures can plummet to -30 Celsius or lower. And with the wind chill, it can feel substantially colder. That's not just uncomfortable, that's life-altering. Living here means learning to manage the cold. You're gonna need thick winter gear, snow tires for your car, and a strong will to face the elements daily. Shoveling snow becomes a routine, and simply stepping outside can feel like a challenge. Winnipeg averages around 132 days of snow per year, meaning winter feels like it drags on forever. By the time cities like Toronto or Vancouver welcome spring, Winnipeg residents are still bundling up and dealing with the icy roads. The silver lining to this is Winnipeg has on average 318 days of sun, which at least makes it bearable during those winter months. And summer isn't without its quirks. The rapid temperature shifts between seasons can be jarring. And then there's the city's notorious mosquito problems, which, we'll get into shortly. Reason number 2 is the potholes and construction. Winnipeg's roads are infamous for their potholes, and there's a good reason for that. The city experiences some of the most extreme temperature fluctuations in Canada, with harsh winters and warm summers wreaking havoc on its infrastructure. Water seeps into the cracks of the pavement during the winter, freezes, expands, and then causes the asphalt to break apart. This freeze-thaw cycle leaves roads riddled with craters by the time spring rolls around. Every spring, as the snow begins to melt, potholes make their annual reappearance, unfortunately. Some are shallow and just inconvenient, but others are deep enough to damage tires, rims, and just your suspension system altogether. Navigating Winnipeg streets often feels like an obstacle course, with drivers swerving and braking to avoid damage. For newcomers, this can be a frustrating experience, while long-term residents just have come to accept the fact that this is part of their daily life. Then, just as you think the worst of the potholes have been addressed, summer brings a new challenge, which is the construction season. Winnipeg's short but warm summer months are the only time crews can repair the damage caused by winter. While this work is essential to maintaining the roads, it just creates a whole new set of headaches for drivers. Construction projects often lead to lane closures, detours, and long delays. Entire sections of road can be shut down for weeks, making commutes more stressful and time-consuming. It's not uncommon for drivers to deal with multiple construction zones in their daily routes, turning what should be a quick trip into a frustrating ordeal. If you are planning to move to Winnipeg and rely on a vehicle, you want to factor in some extra time for your commute and budget for those potential car repairs. What I've heard is many residents also recommend investing in high quality tires. Don't go for the cheap stuff, and just regularly checking your vehicle for damage caused by these rough roads. Reason number 3, which I think is the absolute worst, is the mosquito problem. I hate those suckers. They gotta be one of the most annoying bugs out there, or insects, or whatever you want to call them. They're terrible. And this is all thanks to the city's rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Winnipeg becomes a mosquito haven during those warmer months. These pests are relentless, as I'm sure you all know, especially during dawn and dusk. Outdoor activities like barbecues, camping, and even an evening walk can quickly become a battle with buzzing swarms. Bug spray, citronella candles, and mosquito nets are summer essentials here. The city does work hard to manage the problem. Winnipeg uses fogging trucks and mosquito traps to keep the numbers in check. But it's a never-ending fight. On particularly bad years, the mosquitoes can make the most scenic summer nights unbearable. So if you are someone who hates mosquitoes like myself or finds insect bites particularly annoying, this could become a major frustration. For many newcomers, it's one of the least expected but most impactful challenges of life in Winnipeg. Reason number 4 is the public transit system. Public transit in Winnipeg is often a source of frustration for residents, especially those coming from larger cities. The bus system is limited in both coverage and reliability. Routes are sparse, schedules are inconsistent, and delays are common, especially in bad weather. If you're planning on relying on the public transit, just be prepared for long commutes, potential inconveniences. Most locals opt to own a car instead, and that's for good reason. Driving is faster, easier, and more practical in a sprawling city like Winnipeg. That said, like any city, they are making efforts to improve transit. However, these developments are slow moving, and Winnipeg's transit system remains far behind cities like Toronto or Vancouver. If you don't plan to own a car, Winnipeg's public transit could quickly become a source of regret. Reason number 5 is the flat landscape. Winnipeg is situated in the heart of the Canadian prairies, and its geography reflects that. It's flat, like extremely flat. For those who enjoy wide open spaces and unobstructed views of the sky, this can feel freeing. Winnipeg is known for its incredible sunrises and sunsets that stretch across a seamlessly endless horizon. However, if you are coming from a place with mountains, hills, or varied terrain, this flatness can feel uninspiring. There are no mountain trails to hike, no elevated lookouts to admire the city, and no dynamic landscapes to explore within the immediate areas. While Winnipeg has beautiful parks, river pathways, and green spaces, outdoor activities are generally limited to flat ground options, just like walking, biking, or some casual sports. For road trips or short getaways, the flatness continues, unfortunately. The surrounding regions offer more of the same prairie landscape with minimal changes in elevation. This can be a disappointment for those who enjoy more adventurous activities like mountain biking or skiing. With that said, the flat terrain does come with its advantages. It makes the city accessible and easy to navigate, whether you're biking to work or jogging along the river or pushing a stroller through the park. The lack of steep inclines make it manageable for all ages and fitness levels. But like I mentioned earlier, for those who thrive on the rugged adventures, Winnipeg's flat geography may not live up to expectations. This lack of variation destination might feel like a significant downside. So you've been warned, it's flat. Reason number 6 is the limited travel access. Winnipeg's central location in Canada has its advantages, but for frequent travelers, it can present challenges. The city isn't close to any major travel hubs, oceans, mountains, which can make getting to your destination more complicated. Winnipeg's international airport is modern and convenient, but it doesn't offer as many direct flights as airports in larger cities like Toronto, Calgary, or even Vancouver. And what does this mean for you? Well, you can expect to have more connecting flights, which can add time and cost to your travel plans. International destinations or even smaller Canadian cities often involve layovers, making what could be a short trip feel much longer. This is something to consider if you're someone who loves to travel frequently or values quick and easy access to other parts of the world. Road travel isn't much easier as the nearest major city is 7 hours away. Cities like Regina or Thunder Bay aren't exactly known for their attractions. If you enjoy spontaneous weekend getaways to vibrant or scenic locations, Winnipeg's isolation might feel limiting. However, Winnipeg's location also fosters a strong local culture. Residents make the most of the city's festivals, parks, and recreational options. Attractions like the Forks, Assiniboine Park, and the Canadian Museum for Human Rights offer plenty to do within the city. And for those willing to explore, there are other lakes, small towns, and historic sites just a few hours drive away. Ultimately, while Winnipeg offers a lot within its borders, its central location can feel restrictive for those who prioritize easy access to travel destinations or diverse landscapes. If traveling is a big part of your lifestyle, this is something you might want to think twice about before moving here. With that said, Winnipeg does have its strengths. The city offers a tight-knit community, affordable living, which again is hard to find these days, and beautiful summer weather that's perfect for outdoor activities. If you are prepared for the challenges, Winnipeg could still be the right fit for you. So you're thinking about moving to Edmonton, Alberta, or maybe you've already unpacked your boxes and are starting to question your life choices. Don't worry, you're not alone. Today we're diving into the top reasons people regret moving to Edmonton. Stick around because reason number 1 might surprise you. And trust me, you're gonna wanna hear it before making any big decisions. By the end of this video, you'll have a clearer idea of whether Edmonton is a place you want to embrace or if it's one you wanna cross off your list. Let's start off with the elephant, or should I say the polar bear in the room. Edmonton's winters are legendary, and not in a good way. They're long, cold, and occasionally brutal. We're talking temperatures that dip to -30 and even 40 Celsius without wind chill. If you're not into scraping the ice off your windshield in April or layering up like an onion just to go get the mail, Edmonton might not be your dream destination. And don't let the mild winters some years fool you. These are just exceptions, definitely not the rule. On top of the bitter cold, Edmonton's weather is notoriously unpredictable. One day it's snowing like you're in the Arctic, and the next the sun is shining as if spring has just arrived. This unpredictability can just make planning your day, or even just your wardrobe for that matter, an adventure. But there is a silver lining in all of this, as Edmonton is one of Canada's most sunniest cities, having an average of 325 sunny days per year. So while you're bundled up, at least the sky stays bright. Plus there are plenty of winter activities for you to do during the winter, so it's not all bad. Coming in at number 5 is the roads. Some people call it pothole paradise. Not even kidding. Thanks to the harsh winters and short summers, the roads here are just constantly under construction. Just when you think they fixed one section, another one just falls apart. These constant repairs make for a summer filled with traffic cones and detours, turning your commute into a patience testing experience. We've all been there. Let's not forget about the infamous Edmonton drivers. It's as if the signal lights are merely just decorative, and merging onto the highway becomes a battle of nerves. Navigating around the city's roundabouts can feel like you're entering into a gladiator arena where only the boldest survive. If you're moving here, just budget for some extra cash for those tire repairs, as hitting these hidden potholes can just cost you big time. Number 4 on our list is the downtown safety. Edmonton's core has seen better days. Post-pandemic, there's been an increase in homelessness and crime, particularly in certain areas. If you're imagining a bustling, vibrant downtown where you can just stroll without a care, you might be disappointed. The transit system has also faced challenges, with reports of safety concerns deterring some people from using the public public transportation. While the city is working on solutions, these issues just remain a point of frustration for many residents. That said, not every part of Edmonton's downtown is unsafe. There are still great restaurants, cultural attractions, festivities to draw people in, but it's essential to do your research and know which areas to avoid, especially if you're new to the city. Number 3 on our list is high taxes. People who live in Edmonton pay some of the highest property taxes in Alberta. For instance, if you had a $500,000 home, you're looking around the $5,500 mark in taxes annually. Compare that to Calgary, where it's about $1,000 less. And you'll start to wonder, where does all this extra money go? Well, part of it went to building Rogers Place. Yes, it's a beautiful arena for hockey fans, but it's a financial burden for taxpayers. And let's not forget about the $22 million funicular. Fancy small word for an inclined railway that very few people often use. And while these projects may add to the city's appeal for tourists, they've left many residents questioning the priorities of the city council. And let's keep in mind, taxes don't just hit homeowners. They trickle down to renters and businesses too, impacting the overall cost of living. And so if you're planning to move to Edmonton, it's worth factoring in these higher than average costs. Number 2 on our list is the urban sprawl and commutes. Edmonton is a sprawling city. While this means plenty of room for parks and just new developments, it also means longer commutes. Public transit isn't exactly world class, and if you're living in a suburban area, getting to work or running errands can feel like a cross-city expedition. The urban sprawl also adds to the lack of walkability for many neighborhoods. Unlike more compact cities where you can actually stroll, grab a coffee, or even run errands, Edmonton often requires a car just to get around. And with the city's push for higher density developments and bike lanes, opinions are divided. Some residents love the progress, though others feel it's a mismatch for a winter-dominant city. If you value convenience and just shorter commutes, choosing your neighborhood wisely is critical when moving to Edmonton. And finally, number 1 on the top reasons people regret moving to Edmonton, Alberta, is the crime rate. Edmonton's crime rate is higher than the Canadian average, and this can be a major concern for newcomers. While much of the crime is gang or just drug related and doesn't directly affect the general public, it's still an issue that colors the perception of the city. Downtown areas, particularly those closer to transit hubs, often see higher instances of crime. For many, the sight of increased homelessness and associated challenges, such as drug use and mental health crisis, can be jarring. While the city has implemented various initiatives to address these issues, progress can feel slow. That said, crime in Edmonton is often localized, so when you get out into these suburbs, they are safe, family-friendly, and well-kept. Communities like Windermere and St. Albert, just outside Edmonton, are examples of areas where residents feel secure and just have strong community ties. For newcomers, the key is research. Understanding where the crime happens the most and just avoiding those areas can make all the difference. Resources like local crime maps, or just go into an area where you're thinking of buying, go knock on some doors, talk to the local residents. They're going to give you a realistic picture and make you feel comfortable with your decision. It's also worth noting that Edmonton has a proactive police force and community programs aimed at reducing crime and supporting vulnerable populations. While these stats may sound concerning, many of the residents don't encounter issues day to day, especially if you're informed about their surroundings. Ultimately, Edmonton's crime rate is a downside, but it's far from the full picture of the city. With the right preparation, you can find a neighborhood that offers both the safety and lifestyle that you're looking for. For some, Edmonton's vibrant festivals, affordable housing, and sunny days outweigh the cons. For others, the long winters and infrastructural issues make it less appealing. Ultimately, the decision comes down to, what do you prioritize in your lifestyle? Are you thinking about moving to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan? Well, it's not all sunshine and river views. There are some big challenges that you need to know about first. From freezing winters that can leave you stuck indoors to surprising quirks that might drive you crazy, life here isn't always as perfect as it seems. In fact, these are the top reasons people regret making the move. But don't worry, I'm here to help you make an informed decision. In this video, I'll break down the key regrets people face and how to prepare for them, so you can decide if Saskatoon is really the right place for you. Regret number 1 is the harsh winters. Like I mentioned, let's not sugarcoat it. Saskatoon winters are intense. Temperatures regularly drop below -30°C, and with the wind chill, it can feel closer to -40 or even 50 degrees Celsius. These frigid conditions can last weeks, and snow doesn't just fall, it stays. The length of winter season can feel never-ending, often stretching from late October to early April. For many newcomers, the hardest adjustment is learning to live with the cold. Winter driving can be treacherous, especially if you're not used to the icy roads. Block heaters for vehicles are a necessity here. You have to have them, and you'll quickly learn that layering up isn't just optional, it's survival. survival. Tasks like shoveling snow and clearing ice off your windshield become part of your daily routine. After a heavy snowfall, you'll spend hours shoveling driveways and sidewalks, and if you don't, it turns to ice, making it even harder to clear, which we've all been there. Even walking to your mailbox can feel like an Arctic expedition on particularly cold days. For pet owners, ensuring your furry friends are protected from the cold adds another layer of difficulty. What I will say though, on the bright side, Saskatoon's winters do offer beautiful snow-covered landscapes and activities like skating, cross-country skiing, and snowshoeing. If you love outdoor winter sports, you might enjoy these months, but if you're not a fan of the long, cold winters, this might be a deal breaker for you. Regret number 2 is the limited nightlife and entertainment. If you're someone who loves vibrant nightlife, Saskatoon might not meet your expectations. While the city has a few bars, restaurants, and live music venues, other options are limited when compared to larger cities. Many establishments close early, and the variety of entertainment can feel underwhelming. That said, Saskatoon does have its own unique charm. Events like festivals, farmers market, and rider game tailgate parties bring the community together. The city also has a growing art scenes with local theaters and galleries offering cultural experiences. For young professionals or those just looking for a more active social life, the limited options might be a drawback. But for families or those who prefer quieter evenings, Saskatoon's slower pace could be a better fit. Regret number 3 is the mosquitoes and other pests. And though summer in Saskatoon does bring warm weather, it also brings unwelcome guests. Mosquitoes. I don't like them. Thanks to the city's proximity to rivers and wetlands, mosquito season can feel endless, especially during those wetter summers. These pests thrive in areas with standing water and can quickly turn a relaxing evening outdoors into a frustrating ordeal. These relentless insects, as we all know, aren't just annoying. They can also carry diseases like the West Nile virus, although cases are rare. People often rely on bug spray, citronella candles, and mosquito traps to keep them at bay, but even these solutions aren't foolproof. And mosquitoes aren't the only issue, unfortunately. Ticks are becoming more common in the region, posing a risk for Lyme disease. Insects like wasps and ants and other pests can also make outdoor activities less enjoyable. And while these challenges are manageable with the right precautions, they're definitely something to consider if you're moving here. Regret number 4 is the isolation and long travel times. Saskatoon is geographically isolated, and that can be a shock for some newcomers. The nearest major city like Calgary and Winnipeg are a 6 and 8.5 hour drive away. Even Regina, the provincial's capital, is about 2.5 hours away. And for anyone just used to being within a quick drive to any other bigger city, Saskatoon's remoteness can feel limiting, and traveling within the province presents its own challenges. Roads in rural or northern Saskatchewan can be poorly maintained, and in winter, snow and ice make them even more hazardous. Long road trips can become grueling, with few places to stop along the way. If you are planning to travel internationally, you'll need to connect through larger airports like Calgary, Vancouver, or Toronto. As Saskatoon's airport offers limited direct flights, so most trips involve at least 1 or 2 layovers. This not only adds time, but it also increases travel costs, making spontaneous getaways less feasible. Regret number 5 is small town mindset. Saskatoon might be a city, but it often feels like a large, small town, which can be both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, the community is close-knit and welcoming. On the other hand, breaking into social circles or networks as newcomers can be challenging, especially in smaller neighborhoods. Small town politics or a slower pace of change are part of life here. New ideas are sometimes met with resistance, and there can be unspoken social norms that just take time to learn. For example, people often rely on word-of-mouth recommendations for services and jobs, which can feel exclusive to outsiders. For those who value close-knit communities, a quieter lifestyle, the small town mindset might be appealing. But for others who are used to the faster pace, more open environment, it may feel restrictive and a bit too laid back. Regret number 6, downtown development and urban sprawl. Saskatoon's downtown area is underdeveloped when compared to other cities. The focus on urban sprawl has left the downtown core with fewer amenities and a lack of density. For an example, finding a major grocery store downtown can be a challenge, which is an inconvenience for residents who just don't own a car. While there are plans to revitalize the area, progress has been slow. Empty lots and ongoing construction projects give parts of the downtown a neglected feel, which can be disappointing for those expecting expecting a bustling urban environment. Suburban neighborhoods continue to expand, offering affordable housing but spreading the city thin. This makes Saskatoon feel more like a collection of neighborhoods than a cohesive urban center. For some, this lack of downtown vibrancy is a challenge. Regret number 7 is limited public transportation. Saskatoon's public transit system is, to put it kindly, underwhelming. The city relies on buses, but the network is limited and often inefficient. For those without a car, getting across the city can be a time-consuming ordeal, with trips taking up to an hour or more. Winter makes public transit even less reliable. Buses are often delayed due to snow and icy roads, leaving commuters waiting in freezing temperatures. Unlike larger cities, Saskatoon doesn't have a subway or light rail system, so your options are limited to buses or taxis. For students or young professionals living downtown, public transit might be sufficient for short commutes. However, for families or just anyone needing to travel across the city on a regular basis, owning a car is almost a necessity. From harsh winters to limited transit in nightlife, these challenges aren't for everyone. That said, Saskatoon has its strengths. The city offers affordable living, tight-knit community, and stunning natural beauty. If you are in fact prepared for these challenges, Saskatoon might be the perfect place for you. Thinking about moving to Victoria, BC? Well, before you make the leap, there are just a few things you need to know, because it's not all sunshine and ocean views. Victoria is known for its stunning landscapes, there's no doubt about it, and its mild climate. But living here comes with some surprises that might make you think twice. In this video, I'm going to break down the top reasons why people end up second-guessing their move to Victoria. From the cost of living to the challenges of island life. But don't worry, I won't leave you hanging. I'll also share a few tips to help you make the most of it. So stick around because you won't want to miss this. First on the list, which is no surprise, the biggest factor that catches a lot of people off guard, is the cost of living. Victoria is up there with one of the most expensive places to live in Canada. The average price for a detached home is around 1.1 million, and rental prices aren't much better. A one-bedroom apartment can easily set you back $1,500, and renting an entire house can be upwards of $4,000 and up. And it's not just housing, right? Anything from groceries just to dining out tends to cost more. And largely because the goods have to be transported to the island, even day-to-day expenses like gas, utilities, entertainment come with the premium price tag. So if you are moving hoping to find affordability, Victoria might not be your best fit. Because as always, it's important to budget carefully and understand the financial realities before making the move. What I will say though is Victoria, it's beautiful. Outdoor spaces like parks, beaches that provide year-round recreation, and a strong sense of community with the vibrant local markets, cultural festivals, and welcoming atmosphere make it for many worth the higher cost of living. Next up is something that most people often don't appreciate until they've been there for a while, is island isolation. Victoria, if you didn't know, is on Vancouver Island, which means getting to the mainland isn't just a simple hop in your car and drive for a few hours. You'll either need to take the BC ferry, which can be extremely painful, especially during peak seasons, or battling the weather with delays, and starts at $90 for just a car and driver, and adds at least 2 extra hours to your trip. Or you can book a very short but very pricey flight to the mainland. The isolation can make it harder to see family, friends who just live elsewhere, and shipping goods to the island can take longer and just cost more. So whether you're traveling for work, visiting friends, family, planning a weekend getaway, the added travel time and just costs can feel like a hassle over time. But on the flip side, because you just always have to look at it both ways, is that being on the island provides a unique sense of tranquility and just a slower pace of life that many people just absolutely love. And when you combine that with the natural beauty, the clean air, reduced hustle and bustle when compared to larger cities, it can create an environment where you can truly just relax and enjoy life. Another common complaint, the rain. All the time, it happens all the time. It rains so much. Well, welcome to the island. Now, Victoria is known for its mild climate compared to the rest of Canada, but that doesn't mean it's always sunshine and roses. Winter here can be gray, wet, and just plain long. And it gets around 33 inches of rain per year, which isn't as much as Vancouver, surprisingly, but it still can feel very dreary for months at a time. Then when it comes to how many days in a year that it rains, the average sits around 150 days a year. And as we all know, rain can affect your mood, your outdoor plans, or even your daily commutes. So if you're coming from a sunnier climate, the lack of daylight and just the consistent drizzle might take some getting used to. And so to combat this drizzle, this rain, is invest in a good rain jacket and just embrace the cozy indoor lifestyle during these rainy months. And on the plus side, the rain just keeps the city green, lush and beautiful all year round, making for some stunning scenery and some excellent gardening opportunities, as Victoria has world famous gardens that just thrive in this wet climate, truly offering breathtaking landscapes for residents just to enjoy all year round. Next on my list is crime rate, unfortunately. Yeah, crime is another thing that just has been rising in recent years, especially in the downtown core area. As Victoria has seen rising crime rates, particularly related to property crime, theft, and just drug-related issues. While it's still considered relatively safe to other cities, it's something to keep in mind if you're planning to live in or near the downtown area. Many locals have noticed an increase in visible homelessness and substance abuse issues, which can sometimes contribute to just the feelings of unease in certain areas. While the community and local authorities are working on solutions, it's a reality that residents just need to be aware of. Though like in any major city, once you get outside downtown area, crime significantly reduces while having a stronger community feel. Areas like Oak Bay and Saanich, they have quiet streets, family-friendly parks, and just an overall sense of security that makes them ideal places to call home. The next regret is too many municipalities. It's kind of interesting, actually. So if you're not familiar of how Victoria is structured, you might be surprised just to learn that the city is actually made up of 13 different municipalities and districts. This means that each area, like Oak Bay or Saanich, has its own local government, bylaws, and even separate services like police forces. This fragmented system can create inefficiencies, higher costs, and a lack of unified planning across the region, which just can be frustrating. For instance, services like waste management and infrastructure projects can significantly depend on where you live exactly. Many locals feel it would be more efficient just to have a single, unified Greater Victoria, but for now, it's just something you gotta deal with. What I will say to this though is that this setup does allow for unique neighborhoods with distinct character and charm, giving residents a wide range of lifestyle options. Whether you prefer the historic vibe of James Bay, the trendy feel of Fernwood, or the upscale ambiance of Oak Bay, there's literally something for everyone. The next one on the list is the tourists, people, and lots of them. Because if you're thinking of moving to Victoria, you probably know that it's a popular tourist destination. And during the peak summer months, it can feel quite overwhelming with all the amount of tourists and just people that are there. You might find yourself waiting longer for a table at your favorite restaurant, or just feeling like the city is more crowded than you'd like. And it's no surprise that it impacts traffic, parking, and even availability at short-term rentals. That said, if you have a business here or you rely on people coming to your shop, tourism is a huge boost to the local economy, supporting jobs and just bringing a vibrant energy to the city that many residents enjoy. Plus, living in a city with so many attractions means there's always something to do. From festivals and markets to cultural events and waterfront strolls, it's not all bad. Because overall, there is a lot that Victoria does have to offer, and many people love the island life. Ottawa, Canada's capital city, is stunning, historic, and depending who you talk to, is considered one of the best places to live. But for many people who moved here, the reality wasn't quite what they expected. From brutal winters to job market challenges, there are real reasons people end up regretting the move. Today, I'll break down the top complaints about living in Ottawa and help you decide if it's the right city for you. A quick question before we get into this: have you ever thought about moving to Ottawa? Or do you already live here? Let me know in the comments what you think. Let's jump right into the biggest complaint. Winters in Ontario aren't just cold, they are extreme. But that's just the beginning. So if you're not a fan of the cold, Ottawa will test you. While most Canadians are used to cold weather, don't get me wrong, Canada is a little colder, but Ottawa takes it to another level. Temperatures that can drop well below -30 Celsius, and when you factor in the wind chill, it feels even colder. Think frozen eyelashes, frostbite warnings, and cars that refuse to start unless you plug them in overnight. Winter doesn't just hit hard, it lasts long as well. From October to April, it's all about heavy coats, snow boots, and shoveling driveways. By February, most people are tired of sweeping road salt out of their homes and are dreaming of their next vacation to a warmer destination. And a quick fact for you, Ottawa gets an average of 70 inches of snow every year. That's quite a bit of snow. Snowbanks piled so high, it's like a maze when you're trying to walk out somewhere or drive. Walking becomes risky, especially when the freeze-thaw cycles turn sidewalks into skating rinks. Falls and injuries among the older residents are common. Now, if you are a fan of winter sports, you might love it. Ottawa has some of the best skating and skiing around. But if you're not, you're going to be spending a lot of time indoors. And while winter takes a toll on your energy, the cost of living might take an even bigger toll on your wallet. And that's the next reason. High cost of living. Some claim Ottawa isn't as expensive as Toronto or Vancouver, but like most bigger cities, it's far from cheap. And for many, the rising cost of living comes as a surprise. If you're moving from a smaller Canadian city like Halifax or even Winnipeg, the prices here can be shocking. Even smaller neighborhoods around Ottawa, like Canada and Orleans, are seeing price hikes. And just to give you a picture here, the average detached home in Ottawa is over $850,000, and it only goes up from there. And like most major cities, the demand for housing is growing faster than the supply. As people get priced out of the downtown core, they're moving further into the suburbs. While these areas can offer more affordable homes, it often comes with longer commutes and higher transportation costs. If you're renting, it's not much better. A one-bedroom apartment averages around $1,800 a month, where renting an entire 4 or 5 bedroom house will easily run you over $3,000 a month. Then we have the extra costs like utilities, property taxes, and commuting costs that just all add up quickly. And in winter, heating bills can be sky high. For anyone considering Ottawa, I just recommend creating a budget that accounts for housing costs, commuting, utilities, especially heating during those winter months. But even if you can manage the cost of living, Ottawa's quieter pace of life might be another surprise. Which leads me to the next reason. Limited lifestyle and nightlife. Ottawa might be Canada's capital, and it does have great museums and galleries, but when it comes to nightlife entertainment, it's often called, well, boring. In major cities like Toronto or Vancouver, there's always something happening. Concert, a new restaurant opening, or a late night event of some sort. In Ottawa though, the pace is much slower, and it's noticeable, especially if you're used to that big city buzz. Now don't get this wrong, Ottawa does have amazing events like Blues Fest, Folk Fest, and the world famous Winterlude, but outside festivals, day-to-day life can feel repetitive. And if you're looking for consistent entertainment, these events are more seasonal, leaving large gaps in between. For real nightlife, it's common to hear residents joke that if you want a wild night out, you need to hop in your car and head for Montreal for the weekend. Ottawa offers safety, peace, and a more relaxed environment. Now, for families or people who prefer quieter neighborhoods, this could actually be a pro. But if you are relying on the public transit to get around, you might have another reason for frustration, which leads me to my next point, public transit issues. So for those who rely on the public transit, Ottawa's systems can be a daily struggle. Ottawa's light rail transit, or the LRT, was supposed to make commuting easier, but instead it's been plagued with issues. We got delays, breakdowns, and even some derailments. Snow and ice often shut down the trains, which is kind of ironic for one of the world's coldest capitals. If you're not near the LRT line, you're going to be relying on buses, but overcrowding and unreliable schedules frustrate commuters. This next reason, though, is the biggest challenge that I see for anyone wanting to move to Ottawa, and that is the need to speak French. Many people don't realize just how bilingual Ottawa is until they arrive. With its proximity to Quebec and its role as the nation's capital, speaking both English and French are a huge asset. Ottawa being a home to Canada's federal government, which means many jobs, especially management roles, you'll be required to be fluent in English and French. And if you're not bilingual, your job options might be limited. And as we all know, learning a new language when you're a little bit older can be challenging. Now, not all jobs require French, but if you're ambitious, being bilingual is a massive advantage here. So if you're planning to move here, it's worth considering French language courses. Even basic proficiency can make a big difference in your career prospects. With that said, Ottawa does have its strengths. The city is beautiful in all 4 seasons, it's family friendly, and it offers great cultural festivals. If you're prepared for the challenges, Ottawa could still be the right fit. With scenic views of the ocean, amazing selection of parks and mountains, that you get to visit and explore, diverse ethnicity, multilingual, and having a growing population of over 2.6 million people in Vancouver. These are just a few of the things that you may be excited about when you're thinking of moving to Vancouver. But what if there were some scary realities that you didn't expect? Imagine moving to Vancouver only to discover that some parts that are in your dream location become an inconvenient nightmare. Today, that's the part of Vancouver area that I'll be sharing with you, the parts that no one wants to talk about. So before you pack up and move to Vancouver, let's talk about the top reasons people regret moving here. And before we go any further, I'd like to take 30 seconds and ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, hit the thumbs up. And if you want to support the work and the time that I put into making these videos, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. You could probably all guess it, that the most obvious reason people regret moving to Vancouver is just the cost of living. With a report coming out this year, ranked Vancouver at the 101st most expensive city to live in the world, being number 2 in Canada, which is just behind Toronto as the most expensive city to live in Canada. This isn't a surprise. With gas, groceries, right, utility bills, property taxes, rent, real estate, inflation, and then you factor in that wages haven't gone up the same amount, people really do feel the effects of this. And then we can't forget about the housing market being the biggest financial burden of people who live in Vancouver, right? We have rents that have ranged from anywhere from $2,500 for a single bedroom all the way up to 10 grand for an apartment downtown Vancouver. It's insane, right? And then we're talking about the housing prices here. We have houses that have no being worth what they're worth because of the location of the house. It's an astronomical amount of money. So I want to show you an example of what is going on here in Vancouver, just the home prices and how crazy they've gotten out of hand, right? So down the side here, we have 2.4 million for a 3-bedroom house, right? We got a condo here going for 460, another condo for 1.4, 2.3 for a 3-bedroom house, right? What else do we got here? Oh, look at this one here. This is what I mean, right? We have essentially, it's probably going to be a tear down going for almost $1,850,000. The next thing is you have to be able to afford a house like this in Vancouver, right? How much of an income do you actually need to afford a house? Because right now in Canada, the average salary is $71,000 a year. And what you can do is actually go over to the calculator tab on realtor.ca, and it's going to spit out an approximate mortgage amount. So in this scenario, we'll go with the 20% one that they've given, the interest rate I put in there. And so the monthly mortgage payment that would be estimated is $8,257. And so now again, CMHC, they're the ones that dictate how much debt that you can essentially have. So we go over to the debt service calculator, and I put it in already. We have a $71,000 average salary. We have the mortgage payment that's associated to this property. And then we have heating costs, property taxes already put in there. And so this is assuming that you don't have any credit card debt or you don't have any car payment, which most Canadians, they definitely do have that. So you can see that the scale's maxed out. They're literally saying there's no way that you're going to be able to afford a house like this on a $71,000 budget. And so, well, what is the amount that you're going to need? And so I've actually figured this out already. It's $275,000 a year. We're underneath the gross debt service ratio is 39. We're underneath the total debt service ratio of. Now, if you have $275,000 and you want to buy a fixer-upper in downtown Vancouver, be my guest. But I don't think that's what you're wanting to do. Then the next thing we have to factor in is that we have limited land supply here in Vancouver. We have the mountains to the north. We have the oceans to the west. We have the border in the States down to the south. And then we have the Fraser Valley and Hope, where nobody wants to live in. Sorry if you live in Hope. Majority of people don't want to move out that far. And so we have this issue where we're landlocked. You can only build so many homes. And so now as more people come in here, we need more available housing. And so what do? Well, they increase the density of the homes by tearing down these old properties, putting up skyscraper condo buildings. And that's just the reality. We don't have enough housing here in Vancouver. And then to make matters even more interesting is there's this article here, it came out by the Vancouver Sun midsummer. And it talks about Metro Vancouver expected to grow by 50,000 people a year. And so we have the limited land, the not enough homes being built, more people coming to Vancouver. It really does push a lot of pressure on the cost of living within Vancouver. So this report goes on talking about that the region is projected to exceed 4 million people by 2050. That is in my lifetime, and I'm guessing your lifetime as well. And so with all these pressures that are happening within Vancouver, A lot of people are being forced out because they just can't afford the cost of living in Vancouver. They're moving out to the suburbs. They're moving out to the Fraser Valley. And then I'm sure a lot of you have heard that people are moving to Alberta, right? Their money is going a lot farther out in Alberta. And the next one I want to talk about is the homelessness and crime that happens within Vancouver. And since Vancouver's climate is a little milder, this tends to attract a larger homeless population because it just really doesn't get that cold. As far as the type of crime, it's not so much the violent crime, it's more of the petty crimes such as the car break-ins or bike theft, right? You leave something on your dash or in your seat, or you by accident left the door open. Those are the types of crimes that are more common here in Vancouver. And this is something that you just have to be okay with or understand where the homeless people are hanging out, where are these problems happening more often than not. Because as the population of Vancouver grows, so does the homeless population. And so this is actually driving out some residents just to pick up and move somewhere else because, again, to control the homeless population seems to be pretty hard to do. And so people are just moving out of town somewhere else that's not as affected by this problem. And there's actually a report done by Greater Vancouver talking about the homelessness and just some details and facts about it. So I found it actually quite interesting that there was 4,821 people were identified as experiencing homelessness. So it's been an increase of 32% as of 2020. And then age breakdown, I thought was interesting. 70% being adults from the age of 25 to 54. Gender, 69% man, 28% women. What else do we have here? Oh yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting too. Reason for housing loss, 35% not enough income, which in Greater Vancouver, it makes sense because the cost of living has been increasing every year. The next one is weather, being one of the reasons why people regret moving to Vancouver is just because the winters, they're rainy, they're dark, you got these mysterious clouds that roll in, but it's not all bad, right? During the summer months, beautiful days, beautiful scenery, lots of stuff to do. It's just, does the winter months outweigh the summer months? Well, a lot of people tend to think so. So instead of just talking about someone's opinion or my opinion, I wanted to load up some facts just so that you can at least have an idea of what's going on here. And then you can make your own decision whether or not weather is going to be a reason why you don't move to Vancouver. And so we have loaded up currentresults.com, literally just Google searched it, Canada's rainiest cities, and this came up. So when you see this list here, it talks about the top cities that have precipitation. So that's rain and snow. And Abbotsford is actually ranked as number one, having 60.5 inches of rain and snow each year. And then we have Vancouver here, which is fourth on the list of the big cities within Canada. And if we scroll down here, the most wet days. And so again, this is snow and rain. So Vancouver is a couple farther down, sixth on the list, with having 168 days of the year being some sort of rain or snow. And then Abbotsford, which is where I'm at, is just to the east of Vancouver, about an hour and a half, has a few more days wet. And then the most rainy days, so this is just rain, and essentially Abbotsford has 174 days of rain, and Vancouver has 164 days of rain. And so if you're okay with having nearly half of the year having some sort of precipitation, then moving to Vancouver wouldn't be an issue. But if you are a stickler for rain, for snow, just for that type of weather environment, then keep in mind when thinking about moving to Vancouver. Then the next thing I wanted to share with you is how much daylight that we actually have here in Vancouver. And so coming down here, looking at the shortest day of the year, I think it's December 21st. Yeah, so essentially 8 hours. And so what happens often is that you go to the work in the dark and you leave work in the dark. And so I think that's why a lot of people just get affected by the weather, by the amount of sun that we have during the winter months, because there's rains almost half the year. And when it comes to winter time, you have 8 hours essentially of sunlight. Before we explore more of these regrets people are having after moving to Vancouver and then finishing up with a couple practical tips, is that I'm curious on what are you looking for when buying a home in a new area. So if you have a thought, put it in the comments so myself and others can see, and just let me know if I've missed any. And this is probably the least favorite one of them all, is the real estate and rental market within Vancouver. And Vancouver has some of the highest prices and rental prices in Canada. And it's no wonder that many people think twice about moving here, or when they do get here, they realize that they just can't afford the lifestyle that they're wanting while in Vancouver. And to show you some up-to-date stats on what's happening here in the real estate side of things when it comes to the medium sale price with a home in Vancouver. This is a stat center that I have access to because I'm a realtor here down in the Lower Mainland. And as you can see, this graph dates all the way back to 2021. You can see the fluctuation in the median sale price. And so right now, this is including condos, townhomes, detached houses, pretty much all the properties above. The median sale price is $1,040,000 as of August this year. And so with this in mind, people are tending to move out into the Fraser Valley, out into Kelowna, different areas where the cost of living, the real estate prices aren't as much money. Then you might be thinking, well, if I can't afford a property because homes are too expensive within Vancouver, I'll just rent something and save up some money. Well, spoiler alert, rent isn't that much cheaper as well. And so I got Facebook loaded up here. We're looking at the marketplace, specifically property rentals that are in Vancouver area. And I just wanted to show you what's available right now. And so a lot of one bedrooms going for anywhere from $1,400 to $1,600. What else do we have here? One bedroom for $2,500. That seems probably a nice apartment. Two bedroom for $2,000. Let's just change it to 4 bedroom plus. Get an idea if you're looking at, renting a house for your entire family. Right? We got almost $5,000. We got $10,000 for this apartment. We got a room for $1,500, a whole house for $7,000, $6,000, $5,000. And so you can see that renting may be the only option, but it's still, you're not saving the types of money that you want to when living in Vancouver. Next regret that I want to highlight is the economic opportunity within Vancouver itself. And so this is an interesting one to me because it really just depends on where you're at in your life and just what you're wanting to doing. If you're younger, the financial burden of rent or just trying to save up enough money to buy a place may just be too much. You may take years to reach a point where you can actually afford something when you could have just lived elsewhere where the cost of living isn't as great. Put it this way, if you can live in another area that gives you the same opportunities, but is substantially cheaper to live, then to me, it's a no-brainer. But what I will say is that if you have an opportunity to come alongside someone, start a business, or maybe just this is where your network is, and just being around them is going to benefit you while living in Vancouver, then it's probably worth it. Because if I learned anything, that is the sooner that you learn new skills, force yourself in uncomfortable situations that push you to grow, the better it is. Then when it comes to being a little bit more established in your career, right? You may have a family, a couple kids, right? You're doing well in your job. Then moving to Vancouver and taking advantage the offer it has may make more sense. Because unless you have a high-paying job like something in healthcare, real estate law, or maybe even entrepreneurship, it really gets hard to get ahead just due to the overall costs. And then we have the traffic as what people regret when it comes to living in Vancouver. And it's just kind of funny because it's not like you didn't know the traffic was going to be there. There is 2.6 million people living in Vancouver, and it's growing. But it's not until you're sitting in traffic for a few hours trying to get to your destination, which is just a couple kilometers away, is when you realize how frustrating it can be. And as humans, we've all been there where we think of a bad situation in the past that we had, and you think, it just wasn't that bad. And it's not until you relive the experience and wonder, what the heck were you thinking? It's just funny. I always have a chuckle about this. And then you can't forget about the winter, when it snows literally this much and the entire city is shut down because everyone forgets how to drive in the snow, or they still have their summer tires on. Ridiculous. And the city is encouraging people to use transit systems that are available or to ride the bicycle, which is a good step in the right direction, but it's just not always practical. And yes, Vancouver does have a SkyTrain system that's pretty formidable. I found a stat on Google that says early this year, there was 456,300 users per weekday, which is crazy. And then it goes on to say that last year there was a total of 141,339,300 people that used the SkyTrain last year. And I'm sure there's many more reasons people regret moving to Vancouver, but if you're worried about the traffic, go talk to someone who lives in the area. See what the traffic is like at all times. I would go so far as to test the bus and the SkyTrain routes to see if it's actually practical to use. As for opportunities in Vancouver, I'd just weigh out all the options. Do you really need to live there? Or is living in another city an hour away a better fit when you factor in the real estate prices and the rent, or just the overall cost of living. And then you have the homelessness, which just doing your homework ahead of time can really help you understand if this is going to be a big problem for you or not. Are you thinking of moving to Toronto? Maybe it's because you've heard about Toronto's lively downtown, world-class dining, and a skyline that feels alive with opportunity. With its booming job market, cultural diversity, and endless things to do, it's no wonder so many people dream of living here.
A new global housing report has a frank description for two of Canada's biggest cities.
It is being called an historic snowstorm.
The trek around Toronto is the worst in the country.
But could moving to Toronto be a mistake? For many, the dream of Toronto quickly fades into regret. What starts as an excitement often turns into frustration, challenges they never saw coming, leaving them questioning if their move was even worth it. The full picture of life in Toronto isn't what they expected, so stick around. I'm about to reveal the harsh realities most people wish they'd known before making the move. First up is Toronto's work-life balance. Toronto is Canada's economic powerhouse, home to the financial district, we got tech hubs, and countless multinational corporations. While this does foster immense career opportunities, it also comes with a relentless work culture that's just not for everyone. In a city where long work hours are the norm, work-life balance becomes a challenging goal to achieve. Many people spend over an hour each way traveling to and from work, leaving little room for family time or hobbies or just straight up relaxation. The city's work hard, play hard mentality takes over once the workday is ended. Social events, networking opportunities, side hustles, they all just quickly fill up any free time you have. And it's easy to feel left behind if you're just not constantly grinding to stay ahead. The pressure to keep up with the city's fast pace combined with the high cost of living can easily lead to burnout. And like, don't get me wrong, Toronto does offer lots of gyms, wellness programs. Finding time or the energy to enjoy them just becomes a challenge for those who are already stretched so thin. Even those who live close to work often feel the weight of the city's relentless pace, right? And for those coming from smaller cities like Calgary, the contrast can be quite striking. Calgary tends to emphasize a more balanced lifestyle with a stronger community and just family life altogether. And then we have Vancouver, although it's similar in some ways, offers different culture with outdoor activities to help people decompress. In Toronto, however, the fast pace leaves little room for rest, and this constant cycle of just working and the social demands can eventually lead to regret for those who are just seeking a slower, more balanced lifestyle. Then we have cost of living, which, surprise, but not really. Toronto is one of the most expensive cities within Canada. It's no joke. A one-bedroom apartment in downtown typically will cost you anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 a month. While even in outer neighborhoods, you're looking at like $1,800 or more a month. And then if you have a family and you're looking for, a 4-bedroom unit, you can expect to pay upwards of $4,000 a month for downtown, or at least $3,000 a month out in the suburbs. But as we all know, housing isn't the only issue. We have eating out, groceries, transportation, even basic entertainment comes at a premium. A night out at a mid-range restaurant can cost anywhere from $30 to $50 a person. And groceries for a single person can often exceed $800 a month. And then if you want to park downtown for work or for whatever it may be, that's another $200 plus a month for just a spot. And then when you compare it to like a city like Calgary, it's much more affordable lifestyle. A 1-bedroom apartment ranges anywhere from $1,500 for downtown, and a detached house can be purchased for under $500,000. And Vancouver, well, it's not much better than Toronto. It's just that people justify living in Vancouver because you have the scenery, because you have the outdoor lifestyle. If you're moving to Toronto, just ensure that your salary aligns with the high cost of living here. Otherwise, you might find yourself struggling financially. Then we have the pressures of the housing market, and it's not just expensive, it's also very competitive. It's not so crazy that renters are facing bidding wars anymore, though it's usually hard to find reasonably priced units that have landlords who are understanding. But like everywhere, landlords are asking more and more money, which just makes it harder for the renters. And then what about buyers? Well, you're entering into a market where a detached home averages around $1.5 million. And even condos can exceed $7 $700,000. Then Toronto's older housing stock adds another challenge. Many homes, especially in the neighborhoods like Parksdale or Kingston Market, are charming, but they just require significant renovations. Yes, condo living may be more modern, but the trade-off is smaller spaces, where it's not uncommon for it to be 500 square feet or less. And again, when we compare it to Calgary, where housing is much more affordable and spacious, detached homes with yards are within reach for many families. And Vancouver is similar to Toronto, where it's just going to be challenging to find something that meets your budget and your criteria. So if you are dreaming of homeownership in Toronto, just be prepared for the compromises: less space, older homes, and higher costs than you might have anticipated. And I'm sure this next one won't surprise you, but it's just transit troubles. Nothing worse than just sitting in traffic. I just can't stand it. Toronto's transit system, or the TTC, which is Toronto's Transit Commission, it serves millions of people a day, but it's not without its flaws. Delayed streetcars, overcrowded subways, and aging infrastructure can make commuting a daily headache. You can expect to pay $3.35 for a single trip, and a monthly pass is going to run you $156. Kind of pricey, especially when the reliability just isn't guaranteed. Adding to the frustration are the construction projects that just seem to be never ending, such as the delayed Eglinton Crosstown LRT, which was projected to be done in 2020. And to make matters worse, it's billions over budget and there's still no expected completion date. And the cherry on top that makes you want to scream to the top of your lungs, rip your steering wheel off, is that you could spend hours in traffic only to move a couple kilometers, especially during rush hour. If you own a car, things aren't much better. Parking is scarce, expensive, and Toronto's notorious traffic jams will test your patience. Though Vancouver does have a SkyTrain, which is fast and more reliable, it doesn't cover as much ground. And then Calgary has the C-Train, which is pretty efficient and free for the downtown core, which is not a bad perk. So Toronto's transit does work for some, obviously, but if you're coming from a city where they have better infrastructure, just be prepared for the adjustment. Then we have the climate. Toronto's weather is all about the extremes, and for many, it's one of the most challenging aspects of living here. With winter, it's anywhere from mid to late November all the way to March. Temperatures frequently dip below freezing, and with wind chill, it even makes it feel colder. Snowstorms are common, which leave the roads and just walkways icy and difficult to manage. And then public transit just becomes unreliable during these heavy snowfalls, and then driving in these conditions, it really is no picnic. And then as for summer, when the snow does melt, it brings its own set of challenges. Toronto's summers are hot and humid, while temperatures average anywhere from 27 degrees Celsius in July. And then if you factor in the humidity, the temperatures often rise above 35 degrees Celsius. And then without air conditioning, which not all these homes have, you find it pretty hard to stay comfortable during the heat waves. And then again, when we compare it to Vancouver's winters, which are rainy but mild, and then summers, they are warm, but it's rarely that humid there. It often has a more balanced climate. Calgary's winters, they are cold, but they are drier, and then when you have the Chinooks that come through, they provide a little bit of relief. Overall, Toronto's unpredictable weather can make outdoor activities or just commuting a challenge, leaving many longing for cities with more temperate climates. Now we're going to talk about the limited green space in Toronto. Don't get me wrong, like Toronto's parks are beautiful, but the city is often criticized for just lacking sufficient green spaces, especially for its size. We got High Street, Trinity Bellwood, and Toronto's Islands, which are popular destinations, and they're amazing, but they can feel overcrowded. And trying to find a quiet, natural retreat within the city is just no easy task. And then we have these urban sprawls that just compounds this issue. As the city expands and green spaces often get replaced by new developments, unfortunately, many residents are required to drive way out of the city just to access more serene natural escapes. But not everybody has the time or the resources to do that regularly. With Vancouver, there's Stanley Park offers a vast amount of trails, and it's hard to ignore how close any beach, park, or mountain is to the city. And so what I will say is that easy access to nature is on your top priority. Toronto's limited green space might leave you longing for the greener pastures of other cities. Look, Toronto isn't for everyone. And while it does offer incredible opportunities, the challenges can weigh heavily on people who decide to move here. Everyone says Halifax, with its ocean views and slower pace of life, is the perfect place to escape the big city chaos. But is it really? Sure, it's more affordable than Toronto or Vancouver, and the lifestyle sounds dreamy, but there are things you need to be aware of before making the move. In this video, I am breaking down the biggest reasons people regret moving to Halifax. And for the right person, these cons might actually be pros. First one I wanted to get right out of the way
is the higher cost of goods and taxes. It's not good. One thing that surprises a lot of people is how much everyday essentials cost in Halifax. Groceries, gas, alcohol, it's more expensive here than in many other parts of Canada. And that's because Halifax is somewhat isolated and most goods need to be transported in, driving up those prices. On top of that, Nova Scotia has one of the highest tax rates in Canada. Sales tax is currently sitting at 15% with a 1% decrease happening come April 1st of 2025, which will provide relief for people who do live in Nova Scotia. And just an interesting fact on this 1% reduction to the provincial tax rate, it's expected to reduce provincial revenues by about $260 million in the first year. And then you can't forget about the income tax, which when you compare it to other provinces, it's one of the highest. And if you are moving from a place with lower taxes, this can just be a bit of a shock. The pro on this is that with the higher taxes, the healthcare and just education are going to be well funded. So you do have some benefits. And just as a rule of thumb, I don't know about you, but I think I can speak for a lot of people that no one likes higher taxes. So you've been warned. Next one on the list is the weather, something that surprises a lot of newcomers. Halifax weather is not exactly the coastal paradise some people expect. Yes, you're by an ocean, but that means cold, damp winters, frequent storms, and an impressive amount of fog actually. In winter, temperatures hover around freezing, which by no means is the coldest city in Canada, but with the wind chill off the Atlantic, it can feel much colder. And let's not forget about these nor'easter storms. These things can bring a mix of heavy snow, rain, and just powerful winds that make stepping outside truly an adventure. And then when it comes to summers, they can be beautiful, but they're just short and often come with unexpected temperature swings. One day it's 30 degrees Celsius and sunny, and the next it's 15 degrees Celsius and just raining sideways. But the pro on this is if you're someone who loves experiencing all four seasons and doesn't mind a little unpredictability, Halifax gives you that. Plus the changing seasons bring some stunning scenery, fall colors, cozy winters, and amazing summer beach days. Just be prepared for a few surprises from Mother Nature. Then we have job market and wages. So if you're planning on moving to Halifax and expecting a big city job opportunities, you might be in for a rude awakening. While the job market is growing, Halifax still has lower wages when you compare it to cities like Toronto, Vancouver, or even Calgary. Salaries here don't always match the rising cost of living, especially those industries outside of healthcare, education, and just government jobs. Many people move here expecting to find work quickly, just only to realize that the market is smaller, more competitive, and just doesn't always offer the higher salaries. But the pro on this is that the cost of living, especially housing, is still more affordable than those bigger cities, even if you aren't getting paid as much as you would in those other cities. And if you have a remote job, this is actually an amazing place to be since you'll get the East Coast lifestyle while earning the big city salary. Next is the limited public transportation. And so if you're coming from a city with an efficient subway or just a train system, Halifax transit situation might be disappointing. There's no subway, there's no light rail, just buses and ferries. While there is dedicated bus lanes and just plans to expand the services, the public transit in Halifax is just often slow, inconsistent, and just not super reliable, especially if you live outside the downtown core. And if you don't have a car, getting around can be a challenge. But the way I choose to look at this is if you do have a car, traffic is way better than those bigger cities. And you won't be spending hours commuting like you would in Toronto or Vancouver. And if you love walking or biking, Halifax has been making major improvements to its bike lanes and just pedestrian-friendly spaces. Plus the ferry system is actually scenic and stress-free way just to commute if you're heading across the harbor. Next one, which isn't really a big surprise, is the healthcare wait times. This is a big one and really just more of a reminder that finding a family doctor in Halifax can take a long time. So if you're expecting to find a doctor super easily, because the city is smaller, you might be shocked to learn that you'll have to join a wait list just to get a regular physician. Emergency room wait times can also be long, and there's just a shortage of specialists, which really is just everywhere, unfortunately. And while there is efforts, again, like in any city, to recruit more healthcare professionals, the demand still outweighs the supply, which can make getting medical care just frustrating. And my pro tip on this is, well, there really isn't one, but more just a reminder that if you're thinking of moving here and expecting to find a doctor, it's going to be difficult. Next one on my list is it can feel isolated. Halifax might be the biggest city in the Maritimes, but it's still relatively small from the other major urban centers. If you're one of those people who are used to just the weekend getaways and just going to a different city and being able to drive to multiple destinations easily, you might feel a bit stuck here. The nearest major city being Montreal is a 12-hour drive away. And if you're wanting to go anywhere outside of the Maritimes, flights can be expensive and limiting. The pro on this one is that if you are looking for a place that feels more laid back and just community oriented, this can actually be a huge plus. Halifax does have a tight-knit feel and you're never too far from nature, whether that's the ocean, the forest, or hiking trails. And if you love exploring locally, there are plenty of charming towns and just scenic spots just a short drive away. So is Halifax the right place for you? Well, kind of depends on what you're looking for. Spoiler, it's not perfect, but what city is? So if you can adapt to these challenges, you might just find that those pros far outweigh the cons. Are you dreaming of living in Montreal? This city has its charm, but the reality might not match your expectations. From never-ending construction to brutal winters in a housing market that's more expensive now than ever, Montreal has its share of challenges. These are just some of the key reasons people end up regretting their move to this iconic city. Stick with me as I break down the top challenges of life in Montreal. Whether you're drawn to its vibrant culture or just curious about the downsides, this video will give you a full picture so you can decide if Montreal is right for you. All right, let's get started with one of Montreal's most notorious challenges. You guessed it, winters. Montreal's winters aren't the worst in Canada, but they are long, harsh, and relentless. Winters here last about 4 to 5 months, stretching from November all the way to late March, and sometimes even into April. Temperatures can drop below -20 Celsius. When you factor in wind chill, it feels closer to 30 or so. Snowstorms are common, and they can dump several inches or even feet of snow in a single day. On those days, you'll see Montrealers out shoveling their driveways, sidewalks, and even roofs multiple times a day just to keep up with the snowfall. And if you let the snow sit too long, it hardens into ice, making it even harder to clear later. And we all know how frustrating that is. And then for those of you who have a car, winter adds an extra layer of hassle. You'll need snow tires to navigate the icy roads safely, and you'll spend a lot of time scraping ice off your windshield or digging your car out of a snowbank. But it's not just your car you have to worry about. Snow can accumulate on rooftops or temporary car shelters or tempos, putting them at risk of collapse. This isn't just theoretical. There are real cases every year of structures giving way under the weight of the snow. While the city does do a great job of clearing major roads quickly, smaller streets or sidewalks can remain icy for days. Good winter boots are a must, and you'll definitely need to embrace layering up to stay warm. For those who love winter sports or festivals, Montreal offers plenty of ways to make the most of the season. But if you're not a fan of the cold, these winters can be a real challenge. Regret number 2 is the construction. Like any major city in Canada, they have construction. And if there's one thing Montreal is infamous for, it's construction. Montrealers often joke that the city's official mascot is the orange cone. And honestly, it's not far from the truth. You'll find these cones on almost every street, marking construction zones that seem to pop up overnight and just stick around forever. The city is constantly working on its infrastructure, whether it's repairing roads, upgrading bridges, or renovating buildings. And while this is essential for a city as old as Montreal, it can feel like a never-ending cycle. Streets are frequently closed or narrowed, forcing drivers to take detours that add significant time to their commutes. What's even more frustrating is how long these projects can take to complete. It's not uncommon for a single street to be under construction for years. And sometimes it just feels like these cones are just placed to remind you who's in charge, because no work seems to be happening at all. Construction doesn't just affect drivers, pedestrians and cyclists often have to navigate around blocked pathways, and public transit routes are frequently disrupted. For example, bus detours can double or even triple your travel time during major construction projects. If you're moving to Montreal, you'll quickly learn to plan your routes carefully and leave extra time for your commute. Patience is key for navigating the sea of orange cones in the city. And like I'm sure we've all experienced, nothing is more frustrating than not moving for minutes, if not hours, trying to get to your destination. Which leads me to number 3, which is the traffic. Traffic in Montreal is a daily challenge. As a major hub, the city sees a high volume of commuters traveling in and out of the downtown core. Highways, tunnels, and bridges bridges connecting the city to surrounding areas often become bottlenecks, especially during peak hours. Then there's rush hour, which here is just an hour. It can last for several hours in the morning and evening. And it's not just limited to weekdays. On weekends, events that are happening downtown or the ongoing construction can create gridlock that is just as bad as the weekday commute. Accidents and unexpected detours only add to the problem. A drive that would normally take 20 minutes can easily stretch to 40 minutes or longer during peak times. If you're planning to drive in Montreal, a good navigation app like Waze is a must. Even once you're downtown, traffic just doesn't let up. Congested streets, limited parking, and pedestrian-heavy areas can make navigating the city a frustrating experience. Driving in Montreal does require patience, and if you're not used to the urban traffic, it can be a steep learning curve. Regret number 4 is the parking issues. Parking in Montreal is not for the faint of heart. If you're heading downtown, be prepared to pay a premium. And like anywhere, parking meters charge higher rates the closer you get to the city center. And then when you factor in the winter, it makes parking even more challenging. Snow piles often take up valuable parking space, reducing the number of spots available. And if you do manage to find a spot, you might have to shuffle your way in or out after a snowstorm. Just imagine finishing a dinner downtown and then realizing you need to dig your car out just to get home. And then the construction zones add another layer of difficulty, frequently blocking off entire sections of street parking. If you rely on parking in the city, you'll need to be creative and have a lot of patience. Regret number 5 is the potholes. Once winter ends, Montreal roads reveal their next big problem: potholes. The freeze-thaw cycle causes water to seep into the cracks of the pavement, where it freezes, expands, and then breaks the asphalt apart. And then by spring, the roads are riddled with craters. And driving in Montreal during this time feels like navigating an obstacle course. Some potholes are minor, but others can cause serious damage to your car, from flat tires to suspension issues. Repairs can be costly, and avoiding these hazards require sharp attention while driving. And the city does try to repair the worst potholes each year, but it's a losing battle. Even freshly paved roads can start deteriorating in a matter of months. If you are planning to drive lots within Montreal, budgeting for potential car repairs is a smart move. Regret number 6, public transit challenges. Montreal's public transit system is extensive and affordable, with metros, buses, and commuter trains connecting most parts of the city. However, it's far from perfect, and daily commuters will quickly notice its flaws. One of the biggest issues is overcrowding during rush hour. Metro cars and buses often get packed, leaving commuters standing shoulder to shoulder, especially during winter when everyone's bundled up. And it's not the most comfortable experience and can feel chaotic during peak times. Delays are another major frustration. Construction projects and traffic detours frequently disrupt bus routes, adding significant time to your commute. And then once again in winter, snow and ice can make things even worse, leaving people waiting in the freezing temperatures longer than they would hope. While the metro is generally more reliable, it's not immune to service interruptions due to maintenance or technical issues. If you're planning to rely on the public transit in Montreal, it is affordable and gets the job done, but you'll need to be prepared for occasional unpredictability. And then regret number 7 on my list, which I know no one likes, is high taxes. Quebec has some of the highest taxes in Canada, and it's something you'll feel in your wallet. The combined federal and provincial tax rates can take a significant chunk out of your paycheck. For lower income earners, the tax rate is about 26%, but for high earners, it can exceed 50%. These taxes do fund some excellent public services like Quebec's healthcare system. Routine doctor visits, emergency care, and hospital services are covered, making it a big relief for some residents. Education is another area where Quebec's taxes make an impact. Public schools are affordable, and tuition at Quebec's universities is much lower than other provinces, especially for residents. This makes higher education far more accessible compared to places like Ontario or British Columbia. That said, the high taxes can still feel overwhelming, especially for middle-income earners or families trying to save money. If you are planning to move here, it's important to consider how these tax rates will affect your overall budget and financial goals. That said, Montreal does have its strengths. The city boasts a vibrant culture, world-class food, and an undeniable charm that draws people in. If you're prepared to handle these challenges, Montreal still could be a perfect place for you. Ever thought about packing up and just moving to one of the most unique and isolated places in Canada? I'm talking about St. John's, Newfoundland, and Labrador, which may sound like a dream for some, but For others, it can turn into a regret. From the strange local dialect that'll leave you wondering if you're in a different country, to weather that would make you wish that you were anywhere but here. Today, I'm sharing the top reasons people regret moving to this beautiful yet challenging city. So stick around, as you might be surprised at what you hear. Now, here's something you may not think about until you're here. It's the dialect. And just understanding the locals can be a bit of a challenge. If you haven't heard it before, just try watching a conversation between two Newfoundlanders. You can literally just YouTube Newfie accent and you'll get the gist of it. You'll hear words and expressions you won't find anywhere else, and it's really one of those things that make this place so unique, but also something to be prepared for. People from Newfoundland do take pride in their regional dialects, and it can make communication a little tricky, especially for newcomers. The sense of pride and just community here is also something you need to be ready for. While the friendly nature of the Newfoundlanders is often touted as a major pro, it can feel a little bit of a culture shock if you're not used to the small town hospitality and tight-knit communities. For some, this deep-rooted local pride can feel inclusive, but for others, it might take time to adjust to this unfamiliar way of life. All right, let's talk about isolation. Newfoundland is one of the most remote provinces in Canada. And if you're someone who travels frequently, you might find the logistics of getting in and out of here a little frustrating. Flights or ferries to and from Newfoundland can just be a little expensive, and when you're traveling to and from places like Labrador, the costs only go up. Even the ferry to Nova Scotia isn't exactly cheap. It's a long journey and adds extra time and just money to any trip off the island. And just getting around the province can be a challenge as well. Sure, St. John has a lot to offer, but outside the cities, the roads can be difficult to navigate, and many smaller communities are only accessible by ferry. If you're planning to visit more remote towns or just landmarks, you'll quickly realize how difficult it can be. The isolation of the province might feel like an adventure at first, but it can become a burden for those who need to travel often or have family and friends off the island. Now let's talk about something that everyone who's ever lived here will tell you, and it's the weather. Now don't get me wrong, it's not all bad, but if you're not prepared for the climate here, you might start questioning your decision. First up, we got the snow, right? St. John's is known for being one of the snowiest cities in all of Canada. And if you don't love the snow, this could be a deal breaker. And I'm not just talking about a few inches, here and there. Some years snowbanks can get so high that they're taller than you. On top of that, they do get a later winter. Just when you think spring is in the air and the snow's all done, you're gonna be hit with a big storm, what locals call Sheila's brush. And it happens right around St. Patrick's Day, so if you're dreaming of an early spring, St. John's might not be your ideal destination. In fact, most years you'll be dealing with dropping temperatures and less daylight, making it feel like winter just stretches on longer than expected. Another thing St. John is known for is being extremely windy. The constant gusts make a mild day much colder. And if you're thinking about pulling out your umbrella as a newcomer, forget about it. The wind here will tear it apart in no time. Another thing to mention is that the moisture in the air doesn't help either. It feels like you're constantly dealing with just this damp chill, which can be pretty uncomfortable if you're not used to it. That being said, there is a charm to the weather that just many people learn to love. Sure, the snow piles and just the wind can be harsh at times, but it also creates a unique winter atmosphere that's perfect for those who just enjoy the outdoor activities. We're talking snow-covered streets, winter festivals, and just stunning coastal views. There's always something magical about any city when it's blanketed in snow. Plus, Newfoundlanders are known for their resilience, and living through the tough weather just builds a certain sense of community and pride you just can't find anywhere else. Now, if you're moving here for work, you need to be aware of the limited job market. St. John's in the province of Newfoundland only represents a small percentage of Canada's population, which means job opportunities can be harder to come by. And like in any city, there is certain sectors where demand is going to be high. We're talking healthcare or tech or some sort of government job. And if you're in more of a general field, you might have to search a little harder. The smaller population means fewer employers and just competition for available roles, which can be frustrating for newcomers. All I would say is that it's important to come here with a specific skill set that's in demand. Or you might find it a little harder to land a job, especially if you don't want to work remotely. Some people come here expecting just to jump right into a role with ease, but end up feeling stuck just due to the limited opportunities. And if you're relocating without a job or the flexibility to work remotely, which I wouldn't recommend, it's important to have a backup plan in mind. But that said, for every con there is a pro, and so the limited job market can also be a great thing. These smaller populations often mean a tighter knit community where relationships matter and networking is key. They tend to have a slower pace or just a slower feel to them that just appeals to those looking for a better work-life balance. So if you're the type who prefers being more than just another face in the crowd, the personal connections you make here can make a real difference. Speaking of challenges, let's talk about the cost of living. Living in Newfoundland, especially if you're moving from somewhere else in Canada, because pretty much everything has to be shipped in, you'll quickly realize that your shopping bills add up and simple items like fresh produce or just household goods may come at a higher price. The real costs lie in the isolation factor and those additional shipping costs that just add up quickly. On top of that, the lack of big box retailers and just wide selections can lead to a higher price for just basic items. So if you're used to more of a budget-friendly lifestyle in other parts of Canada, the added cost of living here might make you reconsider. While the cost of living can be a bit higher, there are still advantages to living in St. John's. For one, the housing here is generally more affordable when compared to other major cities like Toronto or Vancouver. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or just looking for a rental, you'll find that your dollar does go a little bit further here. The way I look at it is, while you may pay a little bit more for things, the trade-off is access to just unique local products, as St. John is known for its fresh seafood, local-made goods, and just artisan items that you just won't find anywhere else. Another thing to consider is the internet connectivity, especially if you want to keep watching this channel. In St. John's, obviously, you're going to be fine, but if you're traveling or just living outside of St. John's, you might experience some spotty service. It's not uncommon just to drive between towns and lose connection altogether. And that can be a problem if you're working remotely or just need a reliable connection for any other reasons. While it is improving, you'll need to be prepared for just some areas with limited connectivity, especially if you're on the outskirts or you're just used to that fast, reliable service you've had elsewhere. But again, if you are someone who likes the off-the-grid feel, then St. John's and surrounding areas, they might suit you well. While St. John is an incredible place to live with rich culture and just stunning scenery, it's not for everyone. If you're not prepared for the weather, the isolation, higher cost of living, or the thick Newfie accent, it could end up being a tough adjustment. But for those who love the unique charm of St. John's and just Newfoundland in general, the people are friendly, and just the raw beauty of the landscape, it can be a place like no other. So there you have it. No matter where you move, every Canadian city has a dark side. The truth is, no place is perfect. Every city comes with trade-offs, but knowing those ahead of time can be the difference between regret and feeling right at home. Because in the end, it's not about avoiding every regret. That's just unrealistic. It's about choosing the ones you could live with. And if you're thinking about moving to one of these cities in this video, don't hesitate to reach out, as I have referral partners across Canada who can help make this transition smoother. But as always, I appreciate you watching and sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.